Hello and welcome to the TC Exchange podcast. I'm Amity Kraus, ex-retail girl turned realtor turned business owner, where I teach new transaction coordinators how to navigate the complex real estate industry and coach experienced TCs how to level up their game and businesses to add even more value to their agents. Come along with me while I guide you through this intense, complicated, but always fun world of transaction coordination. Well, hello, everybody. It is me, Amity Kraus, with the TC Exchange podcast, and I am so excited for today's episode. Today, I am speaking with my good friend, Michelle Spalding, and we are talking about leading from the heart. Now, years ago, I came across this book that's called Encouraging the Heart. It's a pretty common book that you'll find in business circles about coaching and developing a team. And I remember being so impacted by this book because it was the first time I ever thought about the softer side of leadership. And you'll hear in the podcast today, Michelle and I talk a little bit about the challenges that there are in leadership when you're coming from an environment where you've only had the types of leaders that were almost tyrannical, but now you, as a new transaction coordinator, have a team. And how do you make sure that you're not going to be that tyrannical leader and make sure that your team really is connecting with you and you're connecting with them and you're getting the best performance out of them. So I want to make sure that everybody goes online and checks out the book, Encouraging the Heart, especially if you're a brand new leader, because there's some great principles in there. And I really, really can't wait for you to listen in and hear this fantastic episode with my dear friend, Michelle Spalding. Take a listen. All right. Well, hey, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on today and joining us on the TC Exchange podcast. I am so glad that you are here.
Thanks for having me. Always
delightful. Yeah. Always a delight. I'm really excited about this today. I wanted to reach out to you. I had come across a book that I had read several years ago that was called Encouraging the Heart. And I remember when I read that book being really struck by some of the principles, and then reflecting on the years that you and I have known each other, I thought that would be really, really great to talk about the principles of leading with the heart and what that really looks like when you have a transaction coordinator company, and how we can lead from a place that's heartfelt rather than feeling like we have to be a total jerk as a leader. So that's what I wanted to chat about today. And I thought that we could start our conversation talking a little bit about your amazing background and your history and how you got started and your story with that.
Thank you so much. I'll just be really brief with that because I've shared this longer version of it over the years. Basically, I was looking for some software to help out at the firm that I worked at. We used paper files and things were a mess. And I came across the term transaction coordinator. This would have been in 2004. And I looked at the software and thought, this is what we need. It was a platform that doesn't exist any longer called SureClose. Nevertheless, I at the very same time realized like this is something the clients that we work with need, right? We worked with agents all day, every day. So I get this bright idea to package this up and say to my boss, like, I think we should open another business. And, at the same time, I was looking for something else. I'd been there almost 10 years. I had 3 children. I was working 60 plus hours a week on a quiet week. So I needed like something I thought that could help me work from home, but I didn't think I could do it on my own. So I sat down with him and said, I put together this proposal. Now I'd known this person about 10 years. And in all of like 5 minutes of my proposal, he's like, yeah, that's stupid. Go get me that so-and-so file. And I thought, like the rebel in you that we chatted about earlier, oh no, I'm going to do this anyways. And I spent 15 plus years doing that anyway. So yeah, it's quite
Oh, that's so awesome. You are a rebel. That's why we've always connected.
exactly.
Oh, so when you heard me talk about leading from the heart and encouraging the heart, I have always felt that that has been your leadership style. So talk to me a little bit about what that term leading from the heart or encouraging the heart means to you, and a little bit about how you lean into that style of leadership.
Yeah, so there's two ways that I could look at this. Number one, and I think they both kind of tie back into each other, but number one, it's like people over profits, right? If we take care of the people that work for us, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, if we love up on them, that will come back to us. I firmly believe that. And so I tend to think about people over profits first. Excuse me. However, the other thing that I would say is sort of my twist on the golden rule. And my twist on the golden rule would be to treat others better than they treat you, which is not always easy. But if we go at things with that expectation, I really believe that people rise. And, that was always, those two things were always the things that I thought of when I was working with, a team of, I think we had 22 at one point, was how could I love up on them? How could I help them be the best that they could be, not just in their work, but everywhere. And I knew, and it came back to me. It
Yeah,
absolutely came back to me.
yeah. And I love that. I think that the people over profits is that's absolutely true. And when I think about my past and in leadership, mainly in retail, and it was quite, I had quite the manly retail experience in a male driven industry, and it's carried over into many different things. The one thing that always struck me was wanting to believe that everybody that was in my company that was working for me, whether it was retail or after, they want to do a good job. And so how can I help them do a good job? How can I nurture them into doing a good job? And I think that softer side of leadership it's really so important. And I really think that it's a super key to having that soft side. And this is actually where I was going with that. A lot of our TC companies that are out here today, they are new leaders, right? They're brand new. They're owning their own independent transaction coordinator company for the very first time. And they've never been a leader before, but now they're in the position where they are growing and they need to hire people. But maybe the only experience they've ever had with a leader is somebody who's been a kind of a jerk, that scares them, that brushes their ideas off, that invalidates them, that dismisses them or scares them even, and they don't want to be that way. And so that's why I thought that we could talk about some of those things today.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because prior to this, you sent over some questions, some things you wanted to chat about, and one of them was that. And I hope I can just be honest. You said something about how did I develop my leadership style? Like, where did that come from? And it was the shitty experiences that I had in the workplace as an employee. And I sort of took on this mindset, I think, when I started, was I'm going to do everything the opposite of the way that I was treated, right? In my former work, it was always the most important thing was the firm. right? The most important thing in your life is the firm. And then if there's any space left, you and your family. The most important thing was the firm. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Like the most important thing is the person and their family. And I'm happy that they work with me and that I can provide them with an opportunity to enrich their family, right? Like, but I wanted it to be more holistic, not just about, right? Like checking yourself at the door, right? Oh, now I'm in Michelle's office. So now I'm going to be the Michelle's office employee. And out here, I get to do something else. I wanted them to be comfortable being themselves here. And I wanted to um, maybe overstep my boundary, probably not, but like extend everything that I did to know that I was supporting them in whatever dreams or goals that they had for their lives, right? It wasn't just transactional.
Yeah.
Me, it's so much bigger than that. It's like this ripple effect. And I think that's what brought a lot of loyalty to me. I had several employees that were with me, 12, 13 years. Not everybody was, but but I had some really great people, and I'm still friends with them all these years
Yeah.
later.
Yes, and I think it's so interesting, we have the stereotype that we think what leadership is supposed to be and what our relationship with our boss is supposed to be. And it is a very like dominant and submissive relationship stereotypically. But
Yeah.
I think that the connection between an employer, a leader, and their employee or team member is so, and it's even in the way that you speak about them, right?
Yeah.
They're my team,
Yeah.
there's builds loyalty from both sides when you speak about grouping together and teaming up together and collaborating together, finding solutions together. And I think that too, that a lot of people have this fear that if they say, okay, I'm not going to be this type of leader that I've always had and be a tyrant, that they have to swing completely in the opposite direction and they're afraid they're going to be a pushover. And you can be a lovely and kind employer, leader, and still get the engagement, the performance, and results that
Mhm.
you're looking for from your team. You don't have to turn into a pushover and walk all over me.
Right. Well, I kind of feel like that's almost like if you looked at it as a triangle, maybe that's over here and here's the tyrant. And then here's this like space in the middle where you can establish boundaries. You can create, really great communication. You can support them even through difficult situations, right? And you can create this space where you don't have to be this tyrant that you worked for that has been modeled for you, but you don't have to also be a pushover. You can be this place in the middle where I really feel like that's the kind of leadership that we need more of in the world. And I'm not going to say that I was perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think I did a darn good job. And I think that this is something that I'm really passionate about sharing with people that, yeah, we can have it sort of both ways in that respect, right? Yeah, we can have
Yeah.
great team
I'm
members. It's funny that you mentioned, I just have to say this popped into my head when you were saying team member. I just always called them that, or my girls, but I did get told once that that kind of sounded like I might be running something other than a TC company. Nevertheless, I always thought of them as just we're a team, right? This is an endeavor. And they would come to me occasionally and say, I told them I needed to ask my boss, and I'm like, who is that? Joking. But in all sincerity, like I was like, no, we're gonna, whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. I always said to them with those kind of situations, right? We're going to talk about it. We're going to discuss it. I'm going to listen to what you have to say, but I have to be the one to make the decision because this is my company, right? Ultimately. But I always wanted their feedback. I always wanted their input. I mean, I learned so much from those people. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I've learned so many things over the years from my team, in different businesses. I think that being a leader can be incredibly isolating if you don't have relationships with your employees,
Yeah.
because you don't have all the answers. As much as we like to pretend that we know everything and it's my company and I'm going to make the decisions, yes, but listening to the people around you, there's so much value in there. And especially today where everybody comes from these vastly diverse backgrounds and experiences in their careers that they've had, no matter their age, that have great perspectives, and listening to those, that's how we lead to innovation.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There were definitely things over the years that we did differently because someone said, "What do you think about this, Michelle?" And we tried it and I went, "Oh my gosh, that like where were you a couple of years ago? I needed to know that, right?" Like it was that amazing. But I also think that there were times where I think as a leader we have this like fear of being vulnerable, right? We have to hold it all together. And I know very early on in my business that I was that way. Early on in my business, I remember my sister passed away, and one of my employees who had team members, employees at the time, had been with me already at that point, maybe about a year. And she called me out on like, "Hey, you need to go home. You need to go, right? We've got this. You need to go home." Fast forward years and years later, there was another situation in my personal life that really pulled the rug out from underneath me, and I trusted my team then at that point, way more than I did early on. And they were able to support me through like this really, really difficult time in my life. And most importantly, like I let them. Um they just rose to it. It was pretty amazing, right? Like I didn't feel like I had to be this like hold it all together, hold it all in, and have everything figured out. They were there for me. And I
Yeah.
think because I was there for them countless times and I allowed that kind of to be our relationship, it really paid off.
Yeah, definitely does. It definitely does. So in this book, Encouraging the Heart, there are, I think there's seven different principles that they discuss in the book pretty extensively. And there's some, I don't think we need to talk about every single one of them, but one of the things, that I think is important to talk about, and it stood out for me, is the concept of paying attention. And I think that this goes along with what we've been discussing already. Tell me about, what you think when you think of that principle of paying attention, which is, being aware and responsive to your team. Tell me what you think about that, and what kind of strategies could somebody use to be that responsive.
Well, I think there's two sides to that. Number one, when I would onboard a new team member and we were, working through all of those things to get them trained and up to speed, there was really a lot of hand holding there. But I wanted to create the expectation with them that at one point they would be able to fly on their own. I would still be there for them, right? But they wouldn't have to come to me every single moment of the day and ask me questions. So early on, I was very, very responsive. We had regular meetings, etc. But as we went on, as far as the paying attention goes, I knew what they knew. So there were times I would get an IM from that direct message, instant message, whatever you want to call it, and I would ignore it for a moment. I would sit on my hands, and then within a few moments, I would get, "Oh, never mind, I found it." So I think paying attention, where I want to say this is that, I knew what they knew, and I knew that if I constantly gave them the answer, they would never be able to fly on their own, so to speak. But I paid attention, and if it was something that they needed, like I could, you could tell, "Hey, where do you find this?" That's where you be quiet, right? Or, "Hey, I got an angry person. I need your help. I'm on it right then." Right. So
Mhm.
it was looking at each individual situation and paying attention to what that looked like for them. Um, and knowing when to respond and when not to respond and doing your very best at that. Uh,
Yeah,
the other thing that pops into my head as you say that is also sometimes just I would sometimes get this nudge, right? This like, "Hey, you need to give so-and-so a call. And I would. And they would always be like, how did you know I was having a bad day? And I'm like, I don't know, but let's talk about it. And so it was always listening to that nudge that said, hey, give them a call and check in on them, right? Maybe they didn't speak up as much at the last meeting, or they've been a little quiet on IM, or you just felt it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paying attention.
I think that's great. And that's exactly where I go with that paying attention is understanding your team and their moods. And, I think that in any business, there comes a time where some more crappy things are happening than good.
Yeah.
And you might have a day where every single piece of feedback you're giving somebody is like, this didn't get done, or there's a problem with this file, there's a problem, I'm getting this feedback. And, by the end of the day, the poor TC is feeling pretty beat up. And, as a leader, knowing that and seeing that and making sure that you are there for them and that they're feeling that you are supporting them and understanding what's going on. I think that's a really important aspect. It makes me think of a time when in giving feedback, there was this, you hear it a lot in business and in old school style leadership. It's like, oh, it's not business, it's not personal, it's business.
Yeah.
Listen, anytime you tell somebody that they messed up, it's personal and
Yeah.
they take it personally. It feels personal because people don't try and do a bad job.
Right.
Everybody wants to do a good job. I don't care. I will fight you. The people that say that someone is purposely doing a poor job, there's a lot of circumstances that could make that happen, but in general, that's just not the way it is. And I think that it's really important when you're giving feedback, if you had to have a really, really, really rough conversation with somebody, maybe a conversation that has some consequences attached to it that they're upset about and you were upset giving, you need to go back the next day or a couple hours later and check in on them so
Yeah.
that they know that just because you made a mistake, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. And it doesn't mean that I think that you suck now. That's not what that means. So
No, I think though the one thing that I want to make sure that I share here is that if the only time you reach out to people is to tell them that they've done something wrong, that's not leadership.
exactly.
And we've been in those places, right? I've worked in those environments where the only time I heard from somebody was when I did something wrong. Um, And so I think that, the people that work for us, that work with us, when we are always, when we come at it with, I'm going to treat you better than you treat me, even when we have to have those difficult situations, we have had so many other wonderful conversations with them. We have just poured ourselves into them to try to help them know exactly how valuable they are to us, that when we have those conversations, we can be vulnerable and say, look, I don't like doing this, but I got to tell you about this. And here's what's going to happen if this happens again, right? They know that we are authentic at that point. We're not lashing out at them. We're being a leader.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. It and I think about in my past where the we feel as a leader like we have to we're busy, right? We've got to schedule everything. And so we're going to schedule our one-on-ones and that's different in my mind than regularly connecting with the team.
Yeah.
Having a scheduled one-on-one where tell me about your week, tell me about what's going on with your file, what can I help you with? That's different than picking up the phone and saying, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? Having a really relatable and comfortable conversation. I think real connection just can't be scheduled.
Oh, I like that. I may have to borrow that line. And you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. I totally agree. And I think that, connection can come in a lot of different ways. I always, when I traveled, would buy little gifts for my team. I would mail them postcards from exotic places if I happened to be traveling someplace crazy. I always wanted them to know I was thinking about them, right? Without them, I wouldn't have been able to take those trips, right? It would have just been impossible. But here's the funny thing about it. They did the same thing. So we created like sort of this ripple effect. I mean, how many times have you sent your boss a postcard when you were traveling?
Right.
Yeah.
No,
I can't tell you the number of postcards and gifts I got from places all over the country and all over the world.
I
But
love
I
it.
started it. I started it with my team, buying them like little jewelry, just little trinkets, right? Not a whole lot, but they knew that I was thinking of them then, right? I took the time when I came home to send them something, and um it was like a little thing in their office, hopefully that stayed with them that they could, oh yeah, Michelle gave me that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sent that when
Yeah.
she
I
was
love
aware
that.
of it. Yeah.
I love that. And I think we get so caught up and I think about our TCs that they're seeing all of these, how do I nurture my agents? How do I take care of my agents and connect with them? And are you sending gifts for this, that? Don't forget your team. Don't forget to acknowledge and appreciate your team. And I'm thinking of you. I'm thinking of you, and here's a beautiful postcard of the Rocky Mountains from a trip
Yeah.
I took this weekend or whatever. I love it.
When we sent boxes of love boxes, I can't speak right now. When we sent boxes of love to our clients, that's what I used to call them. I always sent one to the team and I'd stuff it with even more candy.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's fantastic. That's a
Yeah,
fantastic way.
we all
So,
need to know that we're loved.
yes, absolutely. So, recognition I think is really important and personalizing recognition. Tell me what ideas that you had and how you acknowledged people's contributions in a meaningful way.
Yeah. I don't know where this idea came from or how really it started, but when one of my team members would receive a praise, right, an email from a client or a vendor or someone else as part of the transaction, and they would forward it to me, right? And I then would forward it to everybody on the team. And I would say, yay, Amity, way to go. Look at this, right? So I would praise the praise that they got. And then most everybody on the team would like reply all. And we'd have this like whole long thread of, yay Amity or yay whoever it was. Um, and that was just so much fun. It didn't cost anything. It didn't take really any time, but it really meant a lot to everybody on my team. I got a lot of feedback from them on how it felt to be, for that to be validated, right? Yeah, that was a fun way to celebrate and to show everybody. And it wasn't, it happened sometimes, once or twice a week. Sometimes it wouldn't happen for a few weeks. But when it did, it was always, everybody participated. It was always a lot of fun to give those shout outs.
Yeah, I loved giving shout outs and getting shout outs. And I think everybody there's a different thing that motivates them. But I think that one thing that is a common thread is that people are motivated by encouragement and by acknowledgement and recognition, and having your peers jump in and say, wow, you're a badass. I really wish that I could learn how to do that, and see the value that everybody's bringing. For some people, that is way more important than money,
Yeah.
than a bonus or a 2% increase or whatever. That acknowledgement and recognition for their hard work and their contribution
Yeah.
that sometimes is way more important.
Well, another way that I looked at it with my team was for every comment we get like that, every email that we get from someone saying, yay, you for doing this particular thing, there were probably 50 that you deserved. So the one that came and the one that we shared, like really, I kind of felt like this was everybody's celebration. This
Yeah,
person just happened to get it because you and I both know a lot of people don't make the time to do that. I'm guilty of that. I try, but I don't always do it all the time. And so, yeah, that was another reason I wanted to like uplift everyone, right? This is for
yeah.
everyone. We've all done this. Yeah.
Yeah,
All done
yeah,
it.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's all a team effort. Even if you're not working on the same project, the energy that everybody's bringing to the table and to the team can be uplifting.
Yeah.
And It's everybody's win too. So that kind of brings me into the concept of the celebrating together idea in encouraging the heart. What do you think about celebrating together and how those celebrations foster a sense of community with the team?
Um, I mean, I think it's important. I think when I started my business very early on, we started in an office. We started in my home and we were all together, and then we outgrew that. And then we were in an office for almost a year and then shifted and everybody went to work at home. So everybody was local and we would continue to get together once a month for dinner. The office would buy dinner. We would all get together. It wasn't mandatory, but most everybody showed up. So we were able to keep those celebrations together, right? If there was an office event at one of the offices, several of us would go. That would be part of a celebration. But as my company grew, as I moved, as we brought in people from other parts of the country, it became a little more difficult to do that. So we had to think of something else. So we would do Tuesday calls, and our Tuesday calls were really just check-ins. What's
Mhm.
going on? We very, very rarely talked about business.
Mhm.
It was an optional phone call, but most everybody attended. It was kind of like that water cooler time that we might have had in an office. Um, and it was like, what's going on? How are you? What'd you do this weekend? Now, as the leader of the call, it was so funny. Many of my team members were like, not always want to be the first to speak up, but once you got them going, but you know, it would foster community as well. So after those calls, conversations continued to happen, right? So we would chat sometimes about what's your favorite quote, like bring a quote to the call, right? Or we would ask, like, what's a movie that you've watched recently and why did you like it, right? What'd you do this weekend? My job was to kind of make sure everybody got an opportunity to speak and mind the time and pull some things from people. But it always it fostered this community in this virtual way that we were not, since we weren't able to do it in person. And there were times where we would celebrate, right? Somebody would say something that was going on personally for them, a kid graduating, a spouse getting a promotion or a new job or something, right? And we all celebrated that. So that's kind of how we did it in like a virtual way.
Yeah, I love that. I think that we all have had to shift a little bit since many of us transaction coordinators are working from home and our teams are outside of our state and sometimes out of the country. And so how do you still create that sense of community? A few years ago, I was working with this team. I still work with this team today, and it would had grown from being me as the transaction coordinator, and now there was like 3, 4, 10 agents all in the same area that were part of the team, but it was no one knew each other. There wasn't an office to go in because we were with a virtual brokerage. And so the team leader said, let's get Slack. And Slack, for those people that don't know, is a great, way to connect people together in an instant message sort of way. And when I think about how that team of who were initially competitors, who felt like they were out on their own on this island, nobody knew what they were doing, to have this place where they could go on and collaborate. And now that it's been amazing. And there are things that can be applied to any type of business. I love going into that team Slack and seeing all of the different channels. And we've got channels that, that are pure, the real estate channels and the general channels and our training channels and those kind of things. But then we've got channels on, we call it, there's one that's called excommunicado, which are where we put unfortunate clients that have had to
Yeah.
be released because they cheated on the team. So we put that in there. And then we've got health and fitness and random. And it's so much fun to see people collaborate and to have that, even in the TCs, have that opportunity to see that and to have that in our own set of channels where
Yeah.
we can just share a funny meme, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
It's great. I had one of my girls, she put a meme in our random channel, and it was a picture of this cute little girl that was, it was a GIF, and she was trying to catch the ball, and the ball kept falling through her hands, and it just said, "I'm trying."
Yeah.
And and because my girl was having a rough day where things just weren't going well, and everybody else just like jumped into that thread and they're like, "Same girl, oh yeah," and it was just makes you
Yeah.
feel not so alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right. It is, we all, when I started, I wanted to work at home because I needed to have that experience or availability for my family, right? But it is lonely.
Mm.
And once we went from working in an office to working all of us from home, right? The first few months it was like, yes, cool PJs, yoga pants, t-shirts, whatever. But it was those little things, right? The email and the instant messages and the phone calls that really helped us stay connected. When because it is pretty lonely, when
Yeah,
you're talking to the dog sometimes, because you need to talk.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, one last thing that I want to say on, these principles is about, and one of the most important concepts about it, I think, is in setting the example.
Yeah.
And, there's a variety of different ways that you can think about setting the example. But I think I wanted to get your thoughts on how you would demonstrate the behaviors and the values that you want to see in your team. How did you do that? Because being the example, being the person for the team to emulate is so important. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I have like a concise answer. The thing that I would say there is that I always like communication was essential, right? Open lines of communication, right? They knew that no matter where I was in the world, no matter what I was doing, they could always reach out to me, right? That I was always available to them. And most importantly, that I always had their back.
Mm.
How do I think that I displayed those values? And what was important was, I would say, through really just articulating them early and often.
Mhm.
This is the mission of our company. And everyone knew where we were going and what we were trying to accomplish. This is the goals that we have. This is the kind of an environment that I want to work in. These are the kind of people that I want to surround us with, right? So it was really just open and honest communication, right? Receiving feedback. I also told them that everything was figure outable, everything was fixable. We could get through anything as long as they were honest. I had an
Mhm.
employee at one point, a lovely gentleman, great salesperson, who lied to me, and I had to release him. And the reason he lied to me is he thought that if he told me the truth, I would fire him. And in fact, it was quite the opposite. And I gave him chances, and it wasn't that quick and that dramatic. But nevertheless, I shared a longer version of that story with my team because I really wanted to articulate to them, we can figure out anything, right? You forget something, we'll figure it out, right? Somebody yells at you, I will come for that person, right? I have got your back, but you've got to be honest, and you've got to, and we have to maintain communication.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best thing that I could say, right? It was being this example. Um, yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what comes to mind.
Yeah, definitely. I think that integrity, right? Because as a leader, we want to have integrity as a leader. We want to do what we say we're going to do. And and by showing up and demonstrating that you created your company's values because they were important to you. You didn't pick them out of the dictionary for fun, that
Yeah,
they're really who you are, who your company is, and leaning into those core values as the company and doing what you say to do with integrity. It's absolutely so important. I think it it also is what encourages loyalty and faithfulness of your
Yeah.
team.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I forgot to say that I think is really important here is like when you screw up, own it, you know? Like like there were times, oh, I could just tell you stories that would make your head spin, make your hair curl too. But like there were like I will just really briefly remember being in like another country and going into our payroll system to do payroll and then like something happening and I wasn't able to do it then. Like I had to call my team and say, I screwed up. I'm like, I'm gonna fix this, but I can't fix it right this minute. And I could have blamed it on technology. It was the stupid thing's fault, but I owned it and I
Right.
fixed it. And so
Yeah.
there are countless examples that took place over the course of my business and my working with my team where things did not go as they were supposed to go. We tried something, it didn't work, or just technology, but I owned it, right? I said, this is screwed up. This is on me. I'm gonna fix it. Does anybody know anything? Like, I'm happy to listen to that. But
Right.
it fell on me. I was gonna take care of it, but I wasn't gonna hide from it. And I know, unfortunately, that tends to be like sort of a leadership style. It's an unfortunate one, right? We're afraid of confrontation, and so we don't want. I need to be perfect if I'm a leader. Oh my gosh, I
Right.
was not perfect, and they knew it, and that's just what made it more fun, right? It was just
Yeah.
it was honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being you, I think that that principle of being honest and transparent, taking ownership, that's something that's important to me, not only as a leader, but also as an employee. I want to, if I mess up, I'm gonna be the one who says, I messed up and this is what I'm gonna do to fix it. And that trait that came to me from being a leader and from being an employee, that you have to be that type of person. And that I think, well, I mean, I can go down a rabbit hole with that, but that is like that's what makes a great TC.
Well, we
I think,
can't expect the people that we work with to do anything we're not willing to do.
right?
You know,
Totally true. Totally
so
true.
So at the end of that, you have to be that change you want to see in the world. And that means owning up to things that didn't quite go well so that when something happens on your team, they're not going to try to hide it from you for fear of repercussion, right? They're just going to come to you and you guys are going to figure it out together. And yeah, you
Yeah.
may lose a client, you may piss somebody off, but those people are still going to continue to work for you because
Yeah.
you poured into them and they know that you've got their back, right? And nobody, I'm not talking about malicious things like that, right? I'm talking about just general stuff gets forgotten, right? Like an email, we didn't hit send, but we wrote it, right? Like we
Right.
forgot. That's
Right.
malicious. That's just life. Things happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I loved this conversation, and I am so grateful that you came on to talk about it. And I'm sure we didn't even barely scratch the surface on some of the things that we both think about leadership styles and encouraging the heart and leading from our hearts. But I want to give you a chance, and I want to hear about your new venture and what you have going on in your world because I think it's so exciting and I can't wait to support it.
You're sweet. Thank you. Before I jump into that real quick, I do want to say, anyone who's thinking about how we can incorporate any of this into our business, right? Like, where do I start? I think, a blank sheet of paper, you know, just make a list of exactly what you would like. Where would you like to work? Right? What does that look like? What does it look like to go into your office or to your workspace or to sit at your computer? And what does your boss like? Where would you like to work? How would you also then like to show up as a leader to make that happen? And then, continue to share that regularly with the people that work with you, right? This is the goals that I have. And it's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to try. But I think putting it on paper is really important, to really something to check back in with regularly. How am I doing on this journey to be this heart-centered leader, right? To really show up and take care of the people that I brought in to work with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I want
really love that.
thank
I
you.
really love that. That's a
Thank
great
you.
idea.
Yeah, so really quickly, for the last 3 years, I've been in herb school. I have spent the last 25 years and 25 years, oh my gosh, 25 plus years now that I think about it, in real estate. And over the course of that time, I have just met a lot of people exhausted and stressed, and their nerves are fried, their bodies are suffering. And I have found many things in herbalism that have helped me and that have helped others I know, and I have just taken it upon myself to get formal training and be able to bring that into anybody's life that needs it. But I do know a lot of our passionate entrepreneurs, especially those in the real estate space, could probably use a little bit of this kind of stuff. So that's what I'm up to. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love it. I love it.
definitely.
I'm so inspired by the holistic world, and looking at the herbal practices and things that you can bring into your life with the oils and tinctures and things like that, and how helpful they can be. And I'm so glad to see that our minds in general are a lot more open to that
Yeah.
than they were with just, staying the line that Western medicine was the only way to go. And the only thing you can do to relieve your stress is to stop eating red meat or something crazy
Right,
like
right,
that.
right, right, right. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I'm excited to hear more about your success with this. I think it's going to be amazing.
I think that what I want to say there is that it kind of ties back into what we said at the top of the call, right? Holistic has always been really something that's very important to me, right? So when an employee came to me or a team member was a part of my team, right? I took a holistic approach to their existence in my company, right? It wasn't just about what did they do for me? What did they do for the people I work with, right? I wanted it to be this big, I know that we're more than the sum of what we do for some job that we have.
Mhm.
And I really feel like it's the same thing with, herbalism and this, vitalist tradition of herbalism. It's the holistic thing, right? What is eating away at us that's causing this stress, that's causing these symptoms, that's causing this whatever, and taking a look at like how we can um resolve some of that, right? What can we do, right? It's not going to be taking a tincture. It's probably a little bit more than that, but that's something that can help us. Same
Yes.
with, the people that we work with, right? It's not what they can just do for our company in that particular moment, but if we want them to be around and our company to grow based on the fact that they are a part of our team, we got to put people over profits. We got to pour into them. We have to take care of them and let them know that we value them. And I think that's how I think those things tie together. And really, it's just an extension of something I've been doing for a very long time.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, Michelle. Well, before I let you go, where can we find you?
All over the web. But my current best place to find me is Wild Thistle, herbsandalchemy.com. That's where I'm hanging out and doing my herbalism. And of course, all the social media stuff. I'm out there. People know where to find me. And reach out if anybody needs anything, if I can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for coming on today. I had a great time chatting with you. It's always a pleasure, and I can't wait to do it again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And thank you for what you do for the TC space.
All right, you guys, wasn't that fun? I had such a great time talking with Michelle. She is just one of my most favorite people. We always have a great connection, and we could go on and on about some of the topics today. I hope that you learned some really great concepts about how to encourage your team and how to think about how you approach them, and some of the principles of leadership that maybe we don't talk about very often. I am so grateful for every single one of you, and I'm so glad that you were able to take a listen. As usual, please make sure that you like and follow, share our episode with your friends, and drop a DM in the comments. Let me know what you thought. Have a great one. Bye. And that wraps up another episode of the TC Exchange podcast. Thank you so much for joining me and being a part of this incredible journey through the world of transaction coordination. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity to learn, and together, we're setting the compass to true north. If you want to dive deeper into the world of TCs or simply connect with our growing community, follow us on Instagram at TrueNorthTCT. For exclusive content, insights, and engaging discussions, be sure to join our Facebook group, the TC Exchange. And for resources, courses, and a treasure trove of knowledge, check out our website at TrueNorthTransactionServices.com. Keep the conversations going, share your insights, and until next time, keep your compass pointing true north. See you soon.